Here's what you need to know about the Gith. The Gith are an incredibly badass race in Dungeons & Dragons and also one of the playable races in the free-to-play MMORPG Neverwinter. So let's go over the basics of who or what the Gith are and what makes them so interesting. For years and years, the Gith were kept in servitude by the Illithid, or the Mind Flayers. Who they were or what they were called before this captivity is actually largely unknown, but called by some the Forerunners. Notice, however, how I call them Gith now. We'll get to that in a second. The Gith managed to overthrow their mind-controlling overlords, and not only that, they actually succeeded in slaughtering their captors. This action was led by one called, you guessed it, Gith. Right after conquering of their powerful overlords, most of the Gith advocated for a crusade, in which they would not only hunt down other Illithid, but also destroy any other race that could potentially enslave them again. A smaller faction, however, just wanted peace after having known only enslavement. This disagreement even led to an all-out civil war between Gith and Zerthimon, the leader of the Splinter faction. Though Zerthimon eventually died at the hands of the opposing leader, causing his followers to retreat to Limbo. The victorious party now called themselves the Githyanki, and they moved to the astral plane, while those defeated would go on to call themselves the Githzerai. These two groups then started following their own agendas, both determined to hunt down Illithid in their own way. To quote the Githzerai monk, under the Illithids, we and the Githyanki fought and died across 1,000 worlds for implacable masters. Under Vlaakith, Vlaakith being Gith's right hand, our kin fight and die across 1,000 worlds for an implacable master. And they call that liberation? It is important to note that even though the civil war had ended, they still harbor an incredible amount of hatred for each other. This burning hatred only dwarfed by their hatred for the Illithid. It does need mention, however, that there is a small group of both Githzerai and Githyanki with the secret objective to reunite the Gith race. They go by the name of Shasalkau. I'm probably absolutely butchering that name, but I'll pop it up on screen for you. By the way, let me know in the comments what group you would prefer, the Githyanki or the Githzerai. In the first years after splitting up, the Githyanki began experimenting with breeding dogs, selecting the breeds very carefully in order to create the best companions they could to aid in their hunt for the Mind Flayers. The final creation of these experiments is the Kaulgrim, a race of terrifying bear-like dogs that excelled at detecting and hunting down Illithid. The Githyanki mostly resided in the astral plane and only ventured into the material planes when needed. For example, to go on raids, to do the actual dog breeding, or to lay eggs. Yes, Githyanki lay eggs. The reason they did this outside of the astral plane is because in the astral plane, you don't age, which, as you can imagine, makes it hard to hatch eggs. These eggs were then tended to by a Githyanki known as Varsh, whose sole purpose was to tend to the eggs and train the hatchlings. As you can tell, there was no real family dynamic at play. Now, in the aforementioned training sessions, fights to the death weren't all that uncommon, and at the height of a Githyanki's training and as a part of a rite of passage, their mission was to slay an Illithid and bring back its head to Vlaakith. It shouldn't come as a surprise then that the typical Githyanki is cruel, arrogant and aggressive. Even the most open-minded Githyanki would still be seen as rude and sarcastic. All other races were looked upon with contempt by the Githyanki, viewing the martial plane dwellers as incompetent, or worse, potential slaves. Now for the Githzerai, things went a bit different. After the death of their leader Zerthimon at the hands of the Githyanki leader Gith, they followed Zerith Menjara Gith, that's another name to butcher, into Limbo. This Limbo is a plane that represents the chaotic neutral alignment, and Githzerai used their natural psionic abilities and mental focus to control the swirling chaos, shaping it into fortresses and monasteries. As you can imagine, their society was much less a warriors and more so a monk society. Though they didn't just manifest these fortresses and monasteries, they manifested entire cities. The Githzerai inhabitants of these cities, however, do not follow the strict martial discipline enforced in the monasteries. They do revere and respect the discipline of their brethren. Outside of the establishments in the Limbo, they also hold several outposts in the material planes. Especially in the Underdark, they have several outposts where they keep a watchful eye on not only the Illithid, but also their Githyanki cousins. Gith is one of the playable races in the free-to-play MMORPG, and as they are Gith, you are free to decide whether your character will be a Githyanki or a Githzerai. And if you want more basics of Dungeons & Dragons, make sure to subscribe and feel free to check out my other videos. Until next time when we cover more basic knowledge of D&D.